Okay, so we are talking about World War One, and yesterday we talked about the 4 underlying causes of World War One, the reasons why it got so bad. And those 4 causes are.
Are you asking?
I am asking.
Where's Rex? He has a mind. Yeah. Wait, what did you ask?
What were the 4 reasons why World War One got so bad? We kind of broke them down. We said this is what this one means. This is what that one means.
Imperialism.
Yeah.
Yeah, imperialism.
Militarism.
Yeah, militarism. Yes. Heck yeah.
I know this last one. Hold on.
There's 2 more.
2 more, not one.
Imperialism, militarism, nationalism.
That one sounds stupid.
And then
The last one has to do with like me and The Rock.
Oh,
socialism.
no, I remember talking about this.
It's when somebody promises to have your back.
Alliances.
Alliances.
You're evil.
I said loyalty.
There you
You know
go.
that? You're evil.
How am I evil?
All right, here we go. Yes, alliances. All right, so those 4 things are all going to come into play here, okay, with all the stuff that goes down. Because the event that happened at the end of yesterday's notes was that Gavrilo Princip murdered the future king and queen of Austria, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, right?
Yes.
Now, that should not have caused an international war with dozens of countries, including the United States, right? Okay? Yes, it's a big event. It's a big tragedy, so on and so forth. But it doesn't necessarily need to cause one of the, well, up to this point, the worst war of all time. Okay? Because most of those countries had nothing to do with this. But it's mostly the alliance system that kicks in, okay, and militarism, okay, that really gets the ball rolling in this. And then because of imperialism, it's so big, right? Okay, so it kind of, they all play a role here, okay? So here's what goes down. Austria-Hungary and Serbia are the 2 sides that are feuding. Serbian dude killed the Austrian king, future king, right? The problem is that the country of Serbia says, well, we didn't do it. It was just a Serbian dude, right? The Black Hand was a Serbian group inside of Bosnia that was, having an uprising, trying to get rid of the Austrian royalty because they were in town. And it was like, hey, we got a chance to kill the prince. Let's do it. The Archduke. Let's take him down. And so Serbia was like, we didn't have anything to do with that. Yeah, but Austria was like, we know that your government is secretly like funding the Black Hand and you're behind all the stuff they do. And well, so we're not letting you off the hook. Okay, that easy. You're responsible. And so Austria-Hungary is ticked at Serbia and is convinced that Serbia was behind the whole thing. Now, I don't know if they had any real proof or if they were just so upset that they weren't going to let a chance to, prove a point go by. But here's what Austria is worried about. Austria is worried if we go after Serbia, if we start a war with Serbia, then Serbia is not that big of a country. But they have a cousin, a big bad cousin named Russia. Okay? And Russia is a powerhouse that Austria-Hungary doesn't want to deal with. Plus, Russia has allies, France and Britain, the triple.
Oh no,
I was about to say that word.
Yes, it starts with E. Entente.
Yeah.
Yeah, the triple entente. Okay. So remember, really big French fries. Russia, Britain, France. Right. So I know, right? Good job, guys. Okay. So what went down is that Austria-Hungary wants to start something with Serbia, but they're concerned about Russia getting involved. And if Russia gets involved, then maybe France and Britain may also get involved. And so Austria-Hungary doesn't want to have to end up fighting, like they know they can't win if all of those dominoes fall. So Austria-Hungary goes to Germany, who's their ally, right? Because they're in the Triple Alliance, Germany, Italy. But out of the Triple Alliance, Germany's like the big brother. They're like the boss of the gang. Okay, so I don't know if you know anything about gangs or anything like that, but a lot of times, like low-level gangbangers will have beefs with each other. Like, I'm a Crip and you're a Blood, or maybe it's I'm Central and you're a Juarito. Okay, that's in Oklahoma City where I was teaching. the people from Central called the Doritos, okay? And, it's just stupid stuff, right? But the thing is, like, while two gangbangers may have a beef, okay, they might fight each other with their fists. They might even come at you with brass knuckles or, something like that. But they're probably not going to kill someone, because if you kill someone, then potentially you have to you're starting a war, right? Because then the other gang's like, we can't get punked like that. We got to get you back, So now we got to kill in return. And so the leaders of the gangs, generally speaking, keep their guys in line where they teach them, don't get punked, don't let anybody diss on your set, but they don't go around shooting people constantly, because that starts a war. Okay? So if you're gonna, like, if Austria wants to go and start a war with Serbia, then they gotta go ask Germany first. Okay, like that's like a low-level gangbanger going to his boss and saying, "Hey, here's what happened, and here's what I want to do," and basically get the go-ahead. Okay, so it's really at that point it's up to the leader to decide whether or not this is worth, taking it to that level, right? So Austria-Hungary goes to Germany and asks the Kaiser. It says, "Here's what happened. Serbia is they're murdering, our future. We can't let them get away with this. Do you have our back?" And famously in history, they call it the blank check. The Kaiser in Germany told Austria-Hungary, "You got carte blanche, the blank check." Okay. Have you ever been given a blank check in your life?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the point of your parents writing you a blank check?
You can fill in the number.
Okay, your parents don't, but yours do? Yeah, so you can fill in the number. Basically, it's worth whatever you need it to be.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, does that make sense? So if somebody says, "I got your back, no matter what," right? They give you a blank check. That means no matter what you need, we're good. I got you covered. You just write in the number you need.
I had this friend, right? He was like a bodybuilder, won state and all that stuff, right? And this one dude was being an idiot, and he broke with this girl, and this girl, it was a long story, right? And then
It's going to be on the internet later, so I hope it's a good one. Yeah, maybe not. Okay, right. Okay, so let's carry on. Don't forget, we're recording this, okay? So, all right. I thought I might need to stop you. I wasn't sure, but okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Okay, so let's carry on. Right? All right. You might not want to put this on the internet later when they can identify exactly who the people are. And okay.
I'm glad you said no names.
All right. Let's carry on. All right. So, do you guys understand what's happened so far? Are you with me, Aubrey? Aubrey, are you gonna take these notes?
Huh?
Are you gonna take these notes?
No.
Okay.
If we're going fast.
Okay, yeah. So put that down. You don't need that.
I'm looking at some of the notes. Okay, I have them pulled up.
All right. So, the Kaiser, you need to know his name. Kaiser Wilhelm II. He's the king. Kaiser means king of Germany, emperor, okay? So, he's the ruler of Germany. He tells Austria-Hungary, "Do what you need to do. We got your back no matter what." He gives Austria permission, okay, to go after Serbia. So now that sets the stage. Like, Germany could have squashed it. This is where militarism comes in. Remember, militarism is glorification of the military and like wanting to fight. Okay, so the military leaders in Germany are pushing for a war. Now, do you know who Germany wants to go to war with? No, it's France. And let me explain what happens. Okay, so it all goes down. All right. Austria-Hungary sets the whole thing. This is where the whole world went downhill in a hurry. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia over
France,
this.
right?
What? Yeah, Germany wants a piece of France.
But then they get a piece of Russia.
They get a piece of everybody, okay? And that's going to be the problem for them. But, they shouldn't have picked a fight, okay? So you could say it's not Germany's fault. You could say it's not Austria-Hungary's fault. Right? The Serbians have just assassinated, like if it came out that the Chinese assassinated the president, there'd be a war, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's on. We'd be going to war with China. You're not just gonna let that, slip, right? So they're convinced the Serbians have done this, right? So they're gonna go to war against Serbia. And the Germans could have squashed it, but they don't. They say, go for it. Do whatever you want. We got your back, right? So this is where it gets, this is where I think Germany proves themselves what they were all about at this time. Like they wanted this. Because Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia, and then Germany just anticipates that Russia would back Serbia, and so they don't even wait to see how it plays out. They declare war on Russia and France. Now, what does France have to do with any of this? Now, they're in the triple.
Can we just call them the Three Musketeers?
God, shut that. Your brain is so distracted. You're not with us. You're not present. That's why I want you to shut that.
Can we call them Three Musketeers?
It's the one with the E.
The triple entente. Okay, the triple entente. All right. You could have proved me wrong by being involved and being able to answer that question, but you proved me right. Okay, so.
If we have semester tests and.
Your brain is totally not here.
Well,
Okay.
the way semester tests are gonna end up is we're gonna be Thursday, Friday, so we're gonna be the only ones that are taking it here. And then everyone else gets to take it online?
No, I'm gonna make them take it in class.
No,
So
they're all
we'll probably give it
gonna take
Wednesday if we have to, or I don't know what's gonna happen. We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there, but that's not my plan. All right, okay, let's get back to it because we're trying to get through World War I here. We're just trying to get it going, okay? So, this is how the whole alliance system kicks in. I'm gonna explain this whole thing for you guys, okay? So Germany declares war on Russia and France. So in one move, Austria-Hungary has declared war on Serbia and Germany has declared war on Russia and France. Now, I say that Germany wanted a piece of France, okay? And here's why. They don't declare war on Britain. You know what I mean? Like, if they were just declaring war on the whole alliance, wouldn't they declare war on Britain too?
They're scared.
You know what I'm saying? Well, I don't think they're that scared, but the point is that they are going to invade France. In this, like, basically, the way this goes down is that Germany is going after France. Okay, and so when Germany invades France through neutral Belgium, Britain also declares war. And they say, it's our alliance, and Germany's out of bounds, way out of bounds. They're invading neutral countries that have nothing to do with anything, right? And so Britain declares war on Germany and Austria-Hungary, and pretty much everybody's involved. The only countries that didn't jump in here are Italy, who's supposed to be in the Triple Alliance, which is Germany and Austria-Hungary. They were like, this is sketchy how this all went down. This way, they didn't want to jump in. They didn't want to declare war on France and Britain. And, they didn't really want to go to war like Germany and Austria-Hungary do. So Italy says, nah, man, I ain't about this. I guess you can call me a punk if you want, but I'm not in, okay? So anyway, there you go, it's on. So here's a map of how it ends up going down. Green versus yellow, the Allies versus the Central Powers.
Oh wait, so who are our allies?
Well, we're the Allies, we're green. You
Well,
can tell, right? So
right
now, like in this scenario, we weren't in either alliance at all, okay? America has nothing to do with any of this. We aren't in the Triple Entente, we aren't in the Triple Alliance, and we don't have anything to do with the Serbian dude killing the Austrian dude, right? America, this is not our war. And remember,
we made it our war.
well, eventually we do, and we'll explain why, okay? We'll talk about how we get drug into it. That's really an important part of this class, is how do we get involved? At first, we aren't. When the war starts, America is not involved. We don't have anything to do with this, okay? Now, we do have friends in Europe, and our friends in Europe were mainly Britain and France, okay? Which they're on the team that's now called the Allies, right? So, since we have some friends in Europe, if we have to cheer for one team or the other, it's probably going to be our buddies. You know what I mean? But even though it's not our fight, we're closer to them than we are to the Germans and Austrians, okay? So you can see, just based off the map, you would think the green team's going to win, right? Now, the truth is, most of those countries don't really matter. This is where imperialism comes in. The whole continent of Africa is involved, right? Well, like, it's not significant, the fighting and all that stuff. It's just where imperialism drags a bunch of people in that don't have anything to do with it. So that was like yesterday when I talked about my buddies now are fighting his buddies. Remember, we had The Rock fighting against Arnold Schwarzenegger or whatever, and it was getting ugly, And it was like, well,
I
they
think Iraq
really,
would win.
they really don't hate each other,
I think
but
Mark into it.
yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I've always been kind of confused with this whole thing. Like Africa, the
Yeah.
state, are those countries?
Those are countries. Yeah, that map, those are countries.
So the United States is one country, right?
Yes,
And then Canada is its own little country.
yes.
Why
All these
does
things are true so far.
Why does Africa have all the little countries and it's just right there?
Africa is actually huge. Okay, so some of those countries are really big. Now, the United States and Canada are like exceptions in the world as far as like how big a country is. Usually, countries were made a long time ago before they had like modern transportation and things like that. And so, a country that was that big didn't really make sense. When you have to walk everywhere or ride a horse, then you really couldn't be connected to such a big area.
So, is Africa the biggest country?
Continent.
That's a continent too.
I think Asia is probably the biggest continent by landmass.
Yeah.
I would guess.
It's Asia.
But yeah, Africa is huge, and it has like
But I'm saying, why are there so many
50.
countries?
There's like 54
Why
countries
can't
or
it just
something
be
like
states?
that.
The states
Just
are
not the way it's. I mean, they're ruled by different people groups and.
So how is the countries, we have states.
Yeah.
How are theirs?
Okay, so like Mexico has states. Canada has provinces, which are kind of like states. They just call different. Canada has provinces and territories. A lot of places have what they'll call regions, or some places they'll call them states. Like we do. So anyway, yeah. It just depends on the country how they split things up. It's really up to them. Like Oklahoma has counties, but Louisiana has parishes.
Parishes?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So anyway, that's that's kind of how it's right. Exactly. So we're used to having the county system,
Yeah.
but not everybody does it that way. So there you go. All
That's
right.
weird.
The Great Wars of Stalemate. So let's get into the fighting now. Okay, let's see what happens. The German army used something called the Schlieffen Plan. I'll probably put that in somewhere, so you might take a note of the Schlieffen Plan. The Schlieffen Plan is this strategy of attacking France through Belgium. Okay, Belgium's this wide open, flat country in the north. And so, of course, poor Belgium. Belgium gets invaded twice by the Germans. The only thing they did wrong is be halfway, kind of, sort of, in between Germany and France. But you know what's stupid about all this? France and Germany touch each other. Like, you don't have to go through Belgium to get to France if you're Germans. You share a border, So this is where it's, like, really wrong. The Germans are just all about getting an advantage. You know what I mean? Like, they should just go straight across the border and attack France and leave Belgium out of it. But because they feel like we have an advantage if we go through Belgium instead of straight across our border, they just go ahead and take them out twice. World War I and II, both times. They end up going through Belgium. Okay? So, I mean, it's like Belgium just kind of.
I'm taking it off. I'm just adjusting my strings.
I got you. They had to do it. They had to do it right then. I see. That makes sense. It was an emergency.
Yes.
It was an emergency. I got you. Okay. So anyway, they attacked through Belgium to avoid the dense forests and the fortified positions along the border of France and Germany. So France was defending against Germany, but France wasn't defending against Belgium, right? That was their problem. And so since France wasn't defending against Belgium, Germany attacked Belgium, and then Germany went through Belgium to the place where France wasn't defending. It was the Schlieffen Plan. It was like, we're going to swoop through and we'll take them out before they can even see it coming, all right? They'll never expect this, right? So the attack finally gets stalled out at the First Battle of the Marne, just miles from Paris. In fact, during the fighting, they actually would take taxis to the front line, taxi soldiers from Paris to the front line. Okay, that's how close, or to the trenches. That's how close all this is going down. Okay, like that's one of the ways that they end up transporting soldiers. So anyway, it's just that the Germans have almost wiped out France, like all the way to the capital. Okay, so in the early stages, the Germans, because they were the ones that started it and they attacked and they went in an unexpected direction, they were pretty successful, okay? And then the two sides got dug into these trenches. And World War I is all about trench warfare. Put that one in your brains, okay? Trench warfare. Trench warfare is where both sides dig these long tunnels, these long trenches, not tunnels, trenches, right? So you get down below the dirt level. So that way you can't get killed by the machine guns. Because World War I, what changes everything is machine guns. And I mentioned yesterday that what people didn't understand is what machine guns would do to war. And that, war isn't fun anymore. War is just killing and being killed. And it's just, wiping people out. And so to avoid the machine guns, you had to get down below the ground level, right? And then you get your own machine gun built up and you put the sandbags around it to protect it. And then you got these big, long trenches. And then the other team digs too. So World War I is a lot of ways a digging war. The soldiers all had shovels and they're digging these massive trenches all across France.
So were they just like both out there like on their side just digging, and then they're like, all right, let's go to war?
Well, it was in the middle of a battle. They're trying to get dug in while they're trying not to get killed. So that's, the Germans were advancing. You can't dig a trench when the other side's gaining ground, right? Because you got to have some time. But what happened is the French, they probably had some help with the British or whoever their allies were, right? So they put so many soldiers on the field and their fighting is so intense that the Germans have to stop. They can't keep coming forward. They're getting killed. So the Germans have to stop and the Germans get dug down to not die and the French and the British get dug down to not die. And now they're both in trenches. And now you can't move. Okay? Like, it is a very effective in this war, because the thing is they had planes, but the planes weren't very good. Like, the way to kill somebody in a trench is to get them from above. You know what I'm saying? So the planes had a potential to like break this deadlock, except for the planes weren't that good back then. They were just getting started. We'll talk about the planes. So then they invent something else during this war, a tank. Like an armored thing so you can drive out in the middle. But the tanks broke down. The first time they used them in a battle, they drove their tanks out in the middle of no man's land, and then they had mechanical failures, and the men got stuck in the tank in the middle, and if they get out, they get killed, right? And they just became death traps. So, you would think that the tanks would solve the problem too, of like not being able to advance, nobody being able to get anywhere. So the tanks didn't help that much, and the planes didn't help that much, and so both sides are just stuck. And basically what World War I ends up being is a war where you kill them until they're all dead. A war had never been like that before. A war had always been, you take their territory and they give up. But if neither side can advance, neither side can take territory, right? And so the other way of winning at that point is killing them until they give up. Okay, that's the only thing you have left. And the problem was we were really good at killing each other. This is why this war is so bad. This is a horrible war, okay, because of trench warfare. So you can see in the drawing, you have a place in the middle called no man's land. To slow you down, they strung barbed wire all up, like a tangle of barbed wire. Like, I don't know if you've ever been through the woods and you've been in like brambles and sticker bushes that are so bad that like you get like attacked by thorns from all sides, like swallowing you up. Well, that's like the barbed wire in no man's land. It's all over this bramble tangled mess. And so the point is, if the other team is getting out of their trench and trying to run across and jump in your trench, they got to slow down to try to figure out how to get through all this barbed wire. And while they're slowed down, you kill them all, right, with your machine gun. And that's how you prevent them from advancing. Now, it works both ways because you want to get them out of their trench too. But you got to get up and you got to run through the same barbed wire, right? So, it did slow everything down, but it also just turned us into it's really a miserable existence. And the trenches are terrible because when it rains, all the water goes to the low spot. And so it's full of like muck and urine and dead rats, and the rats would come in to eat the bodies, and it's really awful places. They have a disease called trench foot that was really common, and it's where the soldiers had their feet in wet shoes, and they could never dry their feet out, and then they started to get rot, and their feet were rotting off. And anyway, it's a miserable war. Okay, and so you go and you spend your time in the front trench, and then like back here you try to get some rest. The other side is trying to kill you with artillery the whole time. So they got their big cannons, and they're trying to figure out like how to fire up in the air and drop it into your trench and blow y'all up. Okay, so the entire time, this is where people get shell shock. You ever heard of shell shock? It's
Yeah, there's a song about
PTSD,
it.
right? It's PTSD, but so these people are sitting in the trench, and then it's like all day long, it's boom, 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 and you never know if that boom is gonna be the one that kills you, you know? And so you hear the whistling and you hear the boom, you know, and every time you're thinking, this is it, I'm gonna die. And then, you know, right, you know, it's just a miserable experience.
No, it's history. We know it.
So anyway, so you have these trenches and then they would dig out. And so the best way, so what are you gonna do? What's your plan?
Keep digging.
Keep digging, like if you can dig faster than the other team, you know, maybe you could dig around them, you know, cut them off, maybe,
No.
something, I don't know, right? That's what they tried to do. Both sides were expanding their trenches like crazy. Like they're digging all day long, they got people digging. What else could you do? Tunnel under, you ever think about that? They did. They tried to tunnel under many times. That was one of the things they had to do was like listen, see if the other team was trying to dig under and come out, you know, pop out in their trench. And if you figured out they were, then you tried to blow their trench up and bury them alive, you know, or their tunnel, not their trench, right? Okay, so this is a picture of the men, like they dug out little spots so they could sleep and be kind of safer. So they're in the trench, but they're also dug into the wall. That is their little sleeping hole, right? You guys see how they had that? So they were mostly protected unless the shell landed right in front of them. Then they were mostly protected, okay? In that case, yes?
How did everybody, like, you know, you see pictures of like World War I, how did they get this? I always wondered that.
They had photographers and videographers. They actually took video of like the countries, the governments would send people to like, because what they want, they need the people back home to like donate money and like, you know, help the soldiers, donate things. So that was one of the things they did was like to promote the war and say, help our boys. They would go and they would take photos of like the people, you know, in battle or waiting and kind of to be, you know, kind of heroic or whatever. And so that way they could show the pictures to people back home and be like, help our boys out, you know? So they had photographers, they had people that were taking video, and movies were pretty new back then. They had silent films like Charlie Chaplin, you know, and so they took silent films, and there's a movie called They Shall Not Grow Old. And it is done by the British. They took all the video that they took, and then I think it was in the 50s, they interviewed World War I veteran soldiers that went through it all, and they asked them to tell their story about what was it like from the very beginnings, from boot camp all the way through. And then they took the footage. They had all these thousands of hours of video, and they took the footage and they smoothed it out so it wasn't so jerky. They used modern technology. And then they colorized it, which that's been done before, so now it's in color. But then the magic was they added sound. So you could hear, they used like lip readers, you know, and then like they added the sound effects and everything, and they brought it to life. It's amazing. And it's all in the words of the soldiers who were there and the whole story. And I think I'll show it to you guys. So anyway, it's called They Shall Not Grow Old, and it's really neat. It was directed by Peter Jackson. He's the guy that did the Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Flies?
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
Okay, I'm gonna stop here, and we'll stop the video. So trench warfare, basically this slide, basically what would happen is that the two teams would blow a whistle, and when they blew the whistle, that meant all y'all had to jump out of the trench and charge across and try to take the other team out. And while you're getting shot by machine guns.
So what person doesn't go? You know how you like.
Then you shoot them. Your own officer, that was your job. Shoot any cowards.
Like, I mean, like, if one team, like, the whole team, like, you know how, like, you're like, all right, well, we're gonna, like, you know, like, you go, all right, we'll jump in the pool at the same time, and